Hello and welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time here. My name is Patrice Riot and I am very glad to be back to bring you more spooky, scary tales of the strange, paranormal and unusual. Today we have quite a video for you based on a story which all begins in a small town in Kansas, America. This town looks like any other quaint, quiet, small town, which of course has built up over the years. However, on this suburban street, relatively quiet, very ordinary, there sits an equally ordinary looking house. However, what I believe also adds to the eeriness is the fact that this house and street look so normal and ordinary, yet this home is far from that. I am, of course, talking about the infamous Sallie house. Some of you may be very familiar with this, and some of you may be only hearing this for the first time. However, the Sallie house has been investigated thoroughly over the years by many paranormal investigators and many psychics, mediums, and YouTubers alike. And the reason it's been so heavily investigated is because many people have captured lots of paranormal activity and strange goings on in this house. This home was actually built and commissioned by Dr. Finney back in the mid-1800s, and he had it commissioned to not only live in with his family, which he did in the residence upstairs, but to also run his doctor's surgery on the bottom floor. And this was like a general practitioner, family doctor. And of course, he knew people very well. He would have been the person you go to if you're not going to be going to a hospital, but you need obviously some medical attention. Now, all things went relatively normally and quiet until one particular dark, rainy evening where he heard this incessant pounding and banging on the door. Of course, he goes to open the door and he finds a mother there holding the limp body of her 6-year-old daughter. Now, the girl is alive, however, she is unconscious, and the mother quickly explains in a panic to the doctor that her daughter was in a lot of pain and then passed out. So, of course, the doctor hurries them inside, quickly assesses the girl, and he diagnoses her with acute appendicitis, which is essentially like an inflammation and infection of the appendix, which, if it is not removed quickly, it can burst and cause a whole myriad of problems, including potentially death. So he, of course, says that the girl will not make it to a hospital and he needs to perform the emergency surgery right away. As a result, the mother, of course, agrees, and the doctor does give her something to, of course, render her completely unconscious so he can perform the surgery. However, he did not give her the correct dosage, which meant that when he made his first incision, little Sallie, of course, woke up. You can only imagine the terror she must have felt and the shock, fear, pain, not knowing what was going on, and of course being in a position where she was like 1 minute unconscious, next minute in excruciating pain and panic. Now, the doctor and his assistants obviously tried to restrain the girl to carry on the surgery because he was in this mode where he felt he had to absolutely get this appendix out. However, I just remind you, the girl was not completely anaesthetized. She was not. So she was thrashing around and panicking, and as a result, he cut too deep, and the young girl ended up bleeding out right there on the doctor's table. Of course, this is a very tragic, devastating story. However, there is a caveat. There is no record and proof that this story actually took place at all. Now, that's not me saying that it didn't happen, because it very well could have. However, I have to let you know that there is no record of this little girl called Sallie. There is no record of this death. In fact, there are only 4 recorded deaths on that particular property over the years, and it was occupied by several generations of the same family after Dr. Finney moved out. But that just because there's only 4 recorded deaths, that doesn't mean there wasn't others. Something we need to remember is that not all things are reported and not all things are recorded. So some people have speculated, did they not report this? Did the doctor want to keep his reputation? Was something agreed? We don't know. But this tale has very much become embedded and the main entity that is believed to haunt and still be part of this particular home. Now, Dr. Finney ends up moving out with his family from that home in the late 1800s. And as I said, then for many generations, it was the same family. Nothing of the paranormal was reported, which is quite interesting. Again, that doesn't mean things didn't take place, but there's nothing that was recorded or reported over quite a long time span until 1992. In 1992, a young couple called the Pickmans moved into the Sallie house. And they were, like I said, young married couple. They had a baby boy and they moved into the home ready to start this, new life for themselves. And they were renting, so the home was owned by a landlord. His name was Les, and he was very obviously eager to get some new tenants in his home. That being said, very quickly the Pickmans realised that something strange was going on inside this house. They would often hear the traditional kind of startings of a haunting, which we often see, right? We've spoken about this in other videos that I've done about different types of hauntings. I will link that in the description if you want to go and watch that. But we have these traditional hallmarks of a haunting. So the banging on walls, things kind of moving, at the corner of your eye, certain things moving out of place that weren't there before. What kind of seemed in the beginning a lot like poltergeist activity. So you would have the footsteps above on the top landing when both Pickmans knew that nobody else was at home, and of course it wasn't their baby, he couldn't walk yet. They would hear strange sounds. They would have knocking that would occur in various different places of the home without any explanation. Now, in the beginning, these things were kind of few and far between. However, as time rolled on, these things became a lot more common. And one particular significant event, which has been stated over the years and always referred back to in many other investigations, was one day, Tony Pickman in particular goes upstairs to his son's room, and when he walks in, he sees in the centre of the floor there are a circle of several of his son's cuddly toys, literally in the middle of the floor, in a little circle, as if they are having, some kind of creepy little seance meeting amongst themselves. Now, initially, Tony wasn't too freaked out about this because he believed that it was his brother-in-law, his wife's brother, who was apparently an infamous prankster. He loved pranking people, freaking people out. And of course, this brother knew that they'd been experiencing some weird, creepy stuff. So he, of course, decided, you know what, I'm gonna freak him out, right? That's what they thought. However, when the brother came over next and they spoke to him about it, he vehemently denied this. And he said, you know what, I wish I'd thought of it, to be honest, but that wasn't me. Now, of course, that meant that the Pickmans kind of were like, don't know if I believe you. They brought him upstairs to the son's room. They're all standing around there. And Tony is saying to him, no, this is where it happened. This is what it looked like. Come on, just admit you did it, blah, blah. However, the brother's adamant that it wasn't. And whilst they were stood there, the Pickmans and the brother-in-law, they see same said toys moving across the room and forming a circle in the middle of the floor. When this happened, you can only imagine the fright, terror, confusion that they felt. And of course, they left the room in a hurry. After this particular incident happened is when the Pickmans decided they were going to get somebody in to investigate the weird goings on in their house. They, of course, informed the landlord, Les, who agrees to somebody coming to investigate, and they meet with a particular medium called Peter James. Now, Peter James was quite renowned for his mediumship, and he came into the home to regale them with his walkthrough. Now, When Peter did this walkthrough, this is when Peter did his walkthrough, he then relayed to the Pickman family that there were two present entities in the home. One he believed was the little girl who had met her demise in the house, which is the story that we are familiar with and we discussed earlier. However, the second entity, he said, was malevolent and dangerous, and he surmised that there's a possibility it could be Sally's mother, still enraged and angry, even in death, about what happened to her daughter. However, he wasn't 100% sure if that was the case, but he knew there definitely was a malevolent entity present. He suggested to the Pickmans that they give toys and gifts to Sallie to appease her spirit. They did so, thinking it would help. However, it didn't. Things escalated. People then began to see apparitions appear before them, sometimes shadow figures, sometimes mists, but they also began to see the apparition of a little girl. This was not seen before Peter did his walkthrough, only after. And this is the image that people said they saw. It was drawn by somebody who claims to have witnessed the apparition, and then as years have gone on, people have said that's the person, the child that they saw. Now, if you look at the image, it does look like a much younger child than a 6-year-old. However, this is what people have claimed. On top of that, we've had a lot of stories around what, obviously the Pickmans went through and people saying that they've experienced something similar. So before the Pickmans moved out, as things escalated, Tony began to have really vivid nightmares, something that would be really triggering and upsetting for him. It would start to affect his mental health. He'd worry constantly. Some of the nightmares included the house burning down and him not being able to save his wife and child. And what added to that was that the weekly fires started to break out in the home, and they couldn't really be explained. They didn't know how to stop it, they didn't know what was causing it, and that was the final straw for the Pickmans. They took their son and left. Now Les then, the landlord, decides he's going to do his own investigations, and in doing so he brings in an EMF reader, an EVP recorder. So EVP is electronic voice phenomenon, so maybe like if you're having a conversation you might be recording that, but then when you play it back you can hear other voices or other sounds that weren't audible to the human ear. EMF reader is about reading the temperature fluctuations in the room, because it is said when it gets extremely cold and temperature suddenly drops in the room that it means that there is some kind of entity present. So he would record his findings, and one of the things that he actually found out in the closet was very odd. He took a black light to the house, and in that closet area in the master bedroom, right at the back wall, there was blood splatter. Now, that's odd. Because, that you might find some blood splatter in a home with a black light, maybe from a nosebleed or accidentally cutting yourself. But from inside a closet, it doesn't really make sense. How would that happen, logically? On top of that, he also found a sweater kind of balled up right at the back of the closet, and this sweater was like caked in dry blood. Again, he didn't know where that came from. It wasn't the Pickmans, wasn't his. It was very odd that it'd be there and that they wouldn't have discovered it before. So as the years went on, obviously Les too decides to move on and he sells the property. It brings us to our current owners. Now the current owners very much believe in Sallie and her story. They are aware that it could be a distinct possibility that this isn't really a little girl at all, and they have warned visitors about this. Quite often it is said that Sallie is actually a demon that presents itself as a little girl to get people to drop their guard. Now, whether this is true or not, I don't know, because the owners still gift Sallie and encourage visitors to bring her a gift too to appease her. She even has her own designated room in the house despite not actually living there. She gets the radio left on for her so that she doesn't feel lonely, and the radio has also been known to go up and down in volume randomly, turning itself on and off. The TV has also been known to turn itself on and off at random too, as well as people still claiming they see apparitions. So this has gone on throughout the years, and now the owners, they let the house out to paranormal investigators, YouTubers, psychics and mediums, and also the public that are interested in doing a tour of the house. And this continues to this day. One of the most worrying things, though, that is most talked about and associated with the Sallie house is downstairs in the basement on the floor, and Les discovered this back in the early 90s. There is a pentagram carved into the floor. Now, this pentagram they have tried to get rid of over the years by painting it and so on, but it keeps reappearing. And as a result, they decided finally to burn it. Now, a pentagram is originally a pagan symbol, and it represents protection and the four elements of earth, air, fire and water, and the fifth element of spirit. It was never intended to be an evil symbol or anything malevolent. However, as we know, quite often innocent or peaceful symbols are taken and then twisted by those with nefarious intent. Was this pentagram used as part of a dangerous ritual? Or was it used as a protection symbol to protect them during their ritual? We don't know. All we know is that it's there and that they have definitely tried to get rid of it by burning it. Again, burning something to get rid of it is not a good idea, especially if you think it's a malevolent object, cursed, haunted object. Because if you do that, you release whatever energy is trapped inside. So if the pentagram was used for protection, whatever may have absorbed the negativity or evil then gets released out, and may be why some of the activity got worse after they did that. Now, we're going to move on to what I believe the entity may be in the home. And I'll give my reasons as well why I think this has occurred. So to my conclusion, I believe that the Sallie entity isn't actually a little girl. I don't think her story really took place. I believe that this entity is more than likely a PK entity. Now, a PK entity is quite similar to a poltergeist. However, it can manifest as something a lot greater than that, depending on what it's fueled by. So quite often a PK entity is actually triggered by somebody's trauma and unprocessed trauma, unprocessed fears, that then becomes a manifestation of an entity all of its own. Throughout paranormal investigations and its history, there have been several kind of experiments done where they try and create a ghost, right? And it has successfully been done in some cases. I can't specifically remember the name of the experiment that I'm thinking of right now, which is a bit annoying, but if I find it, I will put it in the description box. Essentially, it was a bunch of university students that decided to get together and see if they could create a ghost. And they gave it a name and a backstory and, decided that this entity, passed away in this way. And then they felt like they began to feel the impacts of this haunting, and they recorded it all. PK entities have also been associated with, living human beings when we go through levels of high stress, when we are, in an environment where there's a lot of people that maybe have abilities. Now, these could be abilities people know about, but they could equally be abilities that somebody doesn't realize they have. Now, if an ability, like a psychic ability, is repressed, it can quite often come out in a different way. And that can be through PK entities. And I also believe that over the years, so many people have believed in Sallie, have believed in her story, have believed that this girl did exist and that she is the one haunting the house, that they have unknowingly kind of willed her into existence. All this collective belief from so many people over so many years, I believe is what is causing all of this activity to occur in the home. Now, that's not me saying that I don't think there was poltergeist energy before. I think there was. Now, that could have been something attached to the Pickmans or something triggered by the Pickmans. But the fact that the more people believed in Sallie, the worse things got, including apparitions, sleep paralysis, more paranormal activity. I believe it's from people willing it and thinking about it and talking about it and investigating in the house. And that is what has made this entity become larger than life. And I don't think it's separate entities. I think it's separate, maybe PK energies, PK entities, but not separate in the sense of spirits or demons. Now, I, of course, could be wrong. These are only my thoughts and my conclusions, not necessarily anything that has been proven by any means. But over watching several investigations and reading up on this is kind of the conclusion that I've come to. Now, I am going to leave in the description box 2 of my favourite paranormal investigations of the Sallie house, one being by Sam and Colby, and the other one being by Project Fear. They're really good videos, very spooky, very eerie, so, you know, definitely give those a watch if you would like to give yourself a few scares. Right then, spooky kooks, we are at the end of the video for today. I really appreciate you being with me, listening to this strange paranormal tale and taking part with me today. Just remember, stay safe, stay spooky, stay weird, and I'll see you next time. Bye.